Hey everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we're going to talk with Chad here about a deal he recently closed through the SMB Deal Hunter Pro program just under 4 months or so ago. It took about 10 months from when Chad started working with us to close, and he did finance the majority of the deal with an SBA loan. So today we're going to touch on Chad's background and what he was doing before he bought this business and where he was at before joining us. We're going to talk about some of the biggest challenges of his search, how we were able to help there, dive into the deal he ultimately closed on, and also the part I'm most looking forward to is just how post acquisition, post closed acquisition life has been. So let's jump in. First off, Chad, thank you for joining me today. Let's start with just what you were doing before jumping into buying a business and what kind of prompted you to get into this all.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. And great working with you up until this point. Yeah, so I had a 10 plus year career in accounting and finance. Went to business school right before COVID and then started investment banking after that. So I was in New York, building a skill set, working with talented people, but I think those type of careers, you kind of keep a lot of optionality open. And from really since I was younger, small business was something that I thought would be in my future. I wasn't sure exactly what it would look like. Um, but my family had a small business, and so that's kind of always what I knew. And, the more I researched it and found people like yourselves, I got the confidence to go ahead and to go for it. I was at the time in my life where I was ready to make a change. I was 5 years into an investment banking career in New York, but I had two kids in the city and was about to have a third. And, for a lot of reasons, it just felt like the right time to find something more permanent. And, you know, things in life, I've realized you need a forcing mechanism to actually take on risk and do something that some may think is kind of crazy. And, that's what I did.
Did you find that, were you looking to kind of leave the city and move somewhere new? Was it, the hours with investment banking? What was kind of pushing you to kind of decide to actually, pull the trigger on going down this
Yeah,
path?
it was a number of things. I mean, having multiple kids in the city is a ton of fun, but my family was all further south. So when I did my search, one of the main things I was looking for was a business in Florida, which got me closer to family and was a kind of a key decision factor in quality of life, but also full control over my life, which is partly just owning a business and being able to, you know, kind of create the life I wanted. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge, and I didn't want to, I had a challenging career up until this point. I didn't want to necessarily give up, career upside because I wanted to hang out and um, just focus on family. But, so the stars kind of aligned for me, and, fortunately, was able to get a business down here.
And I'm curious, how long had you been kind of going down this path on your own or searching on your own before joining us, and what kind of progress had you made?
Pretty minimal. I would say it was always in the back of my mind. In New York, there's a lot of people that go into different various investing type roles. So those are always out there, and you talk to people, and um, there's obviously a lot of money moving around, and I would say much fewer people do what I chose to do. But the more I researched it, I was like, should I raise a search fund? Initially, that seemed like a great way to go, but then I realized it wasn't exactly getting me what I wanted. I didn't want to raise money I guess I didn't want to be working for investors and could potentially be forced to sell a business or do something where I wasn't in control. And so, I did a lot of research um, and ultimately found you guys, and it felt like a perfect fit. While working, it's really important to have someone doing a lot of legwork for you. particularly if you're in a busy job, which I think a lot of people who do this probably are. So that was one of the biggest reasons that, I was able to find success.
No, that's a great segue into, my next question, which is what was kind of the main reason you decided to join us? What were you kind of um looking for help with?
The biggest thing for me was having as much resources at my fingertips, and having deals sourced for me, and just being able to look at a volume of opportunities. Doing this on your own, many people realize there's a lot of stuff out there, but 95% of it is things you just don't care to look at all. And so having some filters and getting to see opportunities over and over is super helpful. But then also just the resources to execute the deal. For me, I have a career in accounting and finance and did M&A, so it's not like, I was going into this without any understanding of what I needed to do. But even then, having resources right at your fingertips just makes things so much easier and quicker. And having the kind of the community ask questions too, um, just there's less unknowns, and even if there are unknowns, you can get answers.
That makes sense. I'm curious what was kind of going through your head as you were making the decision to join us. Maybe what were some of the thoughts holding you back? Because obviously, you come from an investment banking or larger M&A background. Um, you know, did you kind of have some thoughts that were holding you back before joining us?
I think I think I had my first call with you and then signed up like a few days later. So I guess probably not too many thoughts holding me back. Um, yeah, once we had the discussion and I realized what you guys were offering, it was a pretty easy decision for me. I wasn't, I didn't, maybe this is a dumb move, but I didn't go see like what a lot of opportunities were outside of what you did. Um, I felt comfortable. I know you had, I think it was a guarantee of finding a business in a certain period of time, and I knew you were going to provide opportunities. And so it felt like a pretty low risk, high reward relationship.
And tell us more about, some of the deals you looked at early on, before landing on this one. What were some of the opportunities you really considered, and how did you ultimately find the one you closed on? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I had a framework in which was kind of numbers driven. Just from my background, I knew to be able to I really wanted to maximize the SBA loan. Like, give me every SBA dollar you can get, and put and put as little money down as possible. So those two things will give you the best return. And then you have to find a business that fits into that parameter, but is also a good business. So it's kind of a lot, but from a numbers perspective, there were things that had to work for me for it to be even potentially interesting. And that means it has to be at a decent size scale. And decent size scale is very relative here. Um, but that was my initial focus. And then I really wasn't, because I was looking at geography, because I wanted that financial profile, I couldn't be super specific in industry or anything like that. So I looked at everything. Um, a lot of there's just you'll see it's mostly service type businesses. Um, I was looking at some medical type businesses. I was in healthcare M&A before, so I thought that could be a good segue where I would have some operational knowledge and know-how. But those opportunities are, few and far between, maybe. And, so ultimately it was just finding a business that had good, sticky revenue, recurring revenue, decent margins, long history of uh, success, could see a path to growth, although it didn't have to be super growthy. And so that was my approach. And, there were a number of things I looked at uh, in those parameters. But ultimately, I don't know if we really haven't talked about this, but I found my business that I ultimately closed on pretty quickly.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. Where did the deal come from? Why don't we just talk about the actual business? Give us some high level deal terms and
So
um,
just very generally a commercial landscaping business, 100% commercial. So the clients um, are kind of, quasi government institutions and uh, developers and HOAs and things like that, servicing common areas and communities and roadways. And, we do ponds and wetlands even, which is a little bit different because we're in Florida. So there's an environmental piece as well. Um, so yeah, I saw the posting and I think it was the day the broker put it online, and I think you guys put it in my deal sheet. And I reached out to him and he said, and I got the background and what they did, the high level. He said he had gotten 80 inquiries day one and it was like noon or something. And I was like, okay, if I want this, I better move quickly. Um, and then I think immediately after that, you posted about it in your broader chat. And I was like, oh boy, it's uh, this is going to be really popular. And the valuation wasn't super high. And my strategy was to offer them slightly more than they even asked for,
makes
um,
sense.
because I knew I needed to set myself apart. And even offering the higher value, it was still well within, I mean, I think it was at like 3 times STE. So it was a comfortable multiple, but being more aggressive on the front end allowed me to, get the business under LOI.
Got it. And you went into LOI, I think like 2.5 months after joining us, and it took maybe 10 months to close. Can you tell us about some of those maybe specific examples of some challenging moments where you found that you encountered that maybe where we were able to be helpful or being part of the program, the community was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, just doing the diligence, having the providers was very helpful. Again, I was still working. I didn't have much time to spend during diligence like I would normally. Um, and so having, a QE provider, for example, that works in this type of, size range and is used to looking through QuickBooks and things like that. That was helpful. I think a lot of people go through this and understanding the financials is not always super easy. Um, Small business, sometimes people do things differently, right? Like everything's not US GAAP.
Yeah.
Um, and so diving in deep there and understanding that is obviously key. And then if you're in an industry that you don't know much about, like I was, it was trying to figure out where the blind spots were, what type of questions to ask. And so I know you connected me with people who've owned and sold landscaping businesses before, and they gave me a lot of kind of industry specific questions, risks, things like that helped me along the way.
It's great. I guess, looking back, anything else we haven't touched on, that was just valuable that you got out of, being part of the program or joining us.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on most of it. The deal flow was the number one thing for me, I would say. And finding a deal in I think it's 2.5 months or something like that was a little bit surprising to me. Um, I guess in a good way. Um, and then, I guess now that I own the business, there's things that are hard to understand during diligence. How an owner truly is running the business, what the clients really think of the business, things like that. you know, it's hard to truly uncover every stone, but fortunately I ended up in an excellent situation. The previous owners, ran the business really well. The clients are awesome. I say that because I realize that could have been the opposite and I wouldn't have known. So it's a little bit of a warning for others out there. And if I were to go through it again, I would try and understand that a little more. Is like, what is the perception of this business? Because we talked to clients and there had been other acquisitions that have gone pretty horribly. Um, and so you just want to try and avoid that any way you can.
No, definitely. Um, let's talk more about the business you acquired. What are some things that now that you're actually running it that you continue to like about the deal and the business itself post close? What are sort of maybe some of your top three things that you like about the business you inherited?
Yeah, so it's all commercial. I mean, I think that's really important for what we're doing. I think the residential landscaping customer is quite difficult. Well, they're all different is the real problem. Um, and so you have a lot of customer demands, complaints uh, to answer to. Whereas we have larger customers and they're much larger contracts. In many cases, they're annual contracts where we get paid monthly to do maintenance. Um, and so it's a really nice mix of kind of stable recurring. And then we do additional ad hoc stuff on top of that, which is usually higher margin, but better upside, and it's a good mix, right? So particularly if you're taking on debt, walking into something where you have a base level cash flow that you can count on, really important. Yeah, I think you said what are the three things? I don't know how many things I
No, that's
said, but
no, no, that's great, and yeah, definitely the recurring cash flow makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, it's been just over 3 months or just under 4 months since you acquired the business. Any sort of big wins you've already scored in this short period of time?
yeah, so we identify during diligence, you ask the owners what would you do if you want to grow the business or what was this business missing? And, hiring a manager for a particular business unit for us was very important. The owner was kind of stepping into that role before, but was also having to be the owner and kind of manage everything. And so that was the first thing we set out to do. Um, and that's paid dividends for us. We've also had some big new contracts come online. Um, I actually I have a business partner in this who owns a minority stake, which is very helpful. I don't know if a lot of other people going through your platform are doing this with a partner, but I would say that helps a ton. Having someone who's waking up thinking about the business like an owner is is valuable, um, because you know employees don't necessarily think like owners because they're not as worried about losing
Sure.
everything or signing up for the SBA loan or whatever it may be. Um, so I guess key people that's probably something that is true for any business, right? If I were to do this again, one of the first things I would do would evaluate who's the managers and who's the leaders, because it just sets the tone throughout the organization. But yeah, we've been fortunate to, we're adding another crew, which means
Oh,
additional CapEx dollars going to work and, less money for me, but, uh, defer the benefit for the future, but it's good. All positive things. I say it's good because that's the high level, but one thing I maybe didn't appreciate is just the things you deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's like mini fires left and right.
yeah. Tell us about some of the, biggest challenges that you've already started dealing with. Maybe what's been tough about running the business.
Yeah, employees, employees, that can be tough. Um, just little things like a car accident or, an issue with your insurance, or a client's upset about something and how do you handle it, or just many things can kind of blow up and kind of be the problem of the day,
Yeah,
um, which you just have to attack. Um, but that's just part of it. I think I think one of the thing that was I'm guessing a lot of people on this program will have to deal with, which is something I did with, is you take over the business and you then have to go update all your clients. And the clients might have had a very serious relationship with the previous owners. Uh, and so they're concerned.
yep.
They're pretty concerned. They're like, who is the new owner and what does this mean for us? And so, setting up meetings and going through and talking to all of them, reassuring them, is something you have to do. But it's also a little bit challenging to have the most convincing message when you've never worked in landscaping. Hey, I come from finance, right? Um, their immediate reaction is like, okay, well, do you know how to do this? Um, so just being a little bit, you just have to be aware of how it might come across and be prepared for the line of questioning and be prepared to address it directly. So that was a lot of stress kind of in the beginning. Um, but we've worked hard on, maintaining those client relationships and going above and beyond for them to make, just to let them know that it's the same company it was before, and if there's anything we can do better, we're going to do it.
That's great that you've been able to, to retain a lot of those customers. Um, I'm curious, you obviously went into this hoping to grow the business. You already added another crew. Did you have a goal in mind, for what how much you wanted to grow the business the first year or two? A lot of businesses, they actually decline and post acquisition the first year a little bit with the J curve, learning the business, maybe losing some clients, but sounds like, you guys are already, adding some new contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I in underwriting and going through diligence, I basically wanted this deal to work with little to no growth. Um, so I set that as a baseline, just super conservative.
Yep.
If we kind of maintain, maybe we grow a few percent, is it still going to work? And that was kind of the baseline we went in with. Um, knowing we were going to do everything we could to try and grow. But it's not like you're going into a service business. It's not like you can say, oh, the industry's growing 20%. So like we expect
Sure.
to grow that much, right?
Yeah.
There in a local business, there's so many things that are kind of dependent on the specific market you're in and the competition and things like that. So we didn't really have some model that said, our upside case suggests we're going to do this. Um, but I think we've been pleasantly surprised. And we talked to the previous owner, and they seem to think they could double size the business if they made the right investments. And so we felt good about it. Um, and yeah, we've been growing since we started, and we've had to bring on a new crew, and we hope to continue to do that. So it's it's been a better start than kind of the baseline case we came in with.
Oh, that's super exciting. Um, I wanna pivot a little bit to sort of on a personal level how it feels, finally being a business owner. You had brought up earlier that with me, prior to this, that obviously you moved to Florida from New York. You changed your careers and you had a third kid all at the same time. So how's it been sort of navigating that? Um, all at the same time. It must be a whirlwind.
Yeah, it's a whirlwind. You try and just get one thing done at a time. I mean, you can't really control certain things like when, when your kid's going to be born, but you know, fortunately we moved in and got settled a little bit before I closed on the business. So that was helpful for sequencing. Um, going from my previous life to this one, I was having to work a lot long hours before. And so, I went home, it was a lot of times, see my family, but then continue working. Now it's like work is done. We get out early. I mean, our crews are showing up to our staging area at 6:30 a.m. Um, but they're done when they're done, and the clients are done too, right? They're not calling me, after 5 p.m. So that's nice. I think that just because of the way I've grown up in my career, being able to shut it off and just like separate family and work time is not easy, but I think it's something that I'm focused on doing now. And I have the opportunity to do it, most importantly, which is really nice. Um, so it's a work in progress, but like I said, all those life changes that I mentioned, those are kind of all behind us, and so now it's just executing, which is good.
No, that's great to hear. And I'm curious, is this kind of what you thought buying a business was going to be like? Is this what you expected?
Um, yeah, I think people have asked me that. It's like, is this what you expected? And I think maybe I knew going in, like generally what things would look like, and I knew there would be a lot of unexpected. So
It's the
there's
right
been a lot
mindset.
of there's been a lot of unexpected, but I think I just had that expectation to begin with. You just have to go with the flow, and different challenges are going to pop up all the time that you couldn't plan for, and you just have to kind of address them one by one and keep going. Um, there's a certain amount of, just being a little naive, which can be good or bad. You don't want to be too naive and do something that step into something that's a problem for you, but sometimes you need a little bit of uh, naivety to take the risk and you know do something like this. Um, so yes, it's very unexpected, and there are things that happen all the time that you just can never plan for. But that's just kind of part of the ride, and I think that's what makes it fun and interesting. And all my jobs before, there was a very specific ask for me, and now it's a little more of a question like, what do I need to do today to help the business? What do I need to do? Kind of what are the things I need to do now, and what are the things I need to do over the next weeks and months to kind of keep things moving forward? And so you kind of constantly have to ask yourself that question. So it's a fun journey to be on.
No, that's great insight, Chad. Last question from me. I want to be sensitive of time. Um, what would any sort of final words for someone who's maybe watching this right now, who's maybe unsure about, working with our team, joining the
Mhm.
program and working with us, anything you have to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just on a personal level, if this is something you want to do, I think you need to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. Um, and most everyone has weaknesses. I don't think people doing this have bought businesses or run businesses before. So if you're an operator, like you obviously need more help, probably on the transaction side or the finance side. If you're like myself, you've never operated before, and it's just being honest with where you might have some knowledge or experience gaps, and just making sure you get all the resources you need. Um, that'd be my advice to people going through it. Utilize everything. It's a little bit, everyone's unique that comes into this, right? So, take advantage of the parts of the program that are most impactful for you. Um, and, I think you would know better than me, but I think people have a pretty good success rate going through it. So, um, yeah, I can certainly vouch for my experience. I honestly, if I bought another business, even though I bought a business before, I'd probably still call you back, say sign
Love
me
to
up
hear that.
again. So
Oh, well, no better compliment than that. So thank you, Chad. Really appreciate your time today. Excited to continue following along the journey. And we'll have to do this again. We'll have to check back in, 6 months, a year from now and see where things are.
awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate all your help this far, and good luck to everyone going through this.